Today I will tackle the Lab 2 entitled Phylum Chordata. Chordates include all animals with three important characteristics during all or parts of their lives, namely, the first is dorsal hollow nerve cord, the second is notochord, and the third is gill slits or gill patches derived from the pharynx. The notochord, from which the phylum derives its name, is a flexible rod of tissues located on the dorsal part of the body, immediately underlying the nerve cord. Two primitive chordate groups are recognized: subphylum Urochordata or the Tournicata, the urochords or sea squirts, and the subphylum Cephalochordata. The cephalochords or lancelets, sea squirts, are marine filter feeders which anchor themselves to rocks. They have a pharynx that is used to stay in water. Both notochord and nerve cord are lost in adult sea squirts. In the lancelets or amphioxus, all three chordate features are well represented throughout the adult life. The third major groups of chordates in the subphylum vertebrate. All vertebrates have a bony of cartilaginous backbone or vertebrae which surrounds the nerve cord, and a skull cranium which encloses and protects the brain. In addition to the vertebrae and cranium, vertebrates also have red blood cells, a tail, or the remnants of a tail, situated behind the anus, and often specialized sensory organs for seeing, hearing, and smelling. Classification of subphylum Vertebrata. Superclass Agnata, without true jaws of pair appendages. Class Myxini, terminal mouth with four pairs of tentacles. Buccal funnel absent. Nasal sac with duct to pharynx, 5 to 15 pairs of gill pouches. Slime glands, partially hermaphroditic and hagfish maxine. Class Spalaspidmordapi, subterral mouth with horny teeth, nasal sac not connected to mouth, 7 pairs of gill pouches of lamprey. Superclass Gratostoma, jawfishes and all tetrapods with jaws and usually paired appendages. Class Chondristites, streamlined body with hairy-roostertal tail, cartilaginous skeleton, 5 to 7 gills with very separate openings, no upper column, no swim bladder, cartilaginous fishes, sharks, stingrays, whale sharks. Class Osteostites, or the primitively fusiform body but variously modified, mostly ossified skeleton, single gill opening on each side covered with upper column, swim bladder or lung present. Class Amphibia, the class Reptilia. Class Aves, endomorphic vertebrates with front limbs modified for flight, body covered with feathers, scales on feet. Class Mammalia, endodermic vertebrates possessing mammary glands, body more or less covered with hairs, well-developed brain. Subclasses Monotrimata, Marsupialia, Ogropia. Exercise number 7. External features and mouth cavity of frog or tag. Introduction. Frogs and toads are commonly used laboratory animals in general and introductory zoology. They have many similarities to higher vertebrates both in form and structure. Objectives. By the ends of this exercise, you should be able to identify the external anatomical structures of a frog or a toad. Identify the parts of the mouth, buccal cavity of the frog or the toad. materials, and methods. Live frog or tide in a closed plastic jar. Dissecting set. Chloroform and cotton. Dissecting pan. Secure a covered container to leave a specimen. Your instructor will provide the right amount of chloroform for each specimen. Cover the container when the frog tooth is unconscious. Remove it from the container and wash the mouth cavity. Before regurgitate the dead sets, open the mouth cavity and place a stick to keep the mouth open for further observations. Position the specimen in the dissecting pan. Use forceps to handle specimen to observe carefully the distinguishes its features. Determine the genus of your specimen based on the characteristics mentioned below. The frog is characterized by having smooth and slimy bodies. The common Philippine frog, tod, is characterized by rough skin with numerous wart-like irregularities. The common tod. Determine the sex of your specimen by observing these features. The first finger of the male frog or tod is swollen during the feeding season. The male frog or tod has dark pigmented areas at the angles of the lower jaw on the ventral surface of the head. The male is generally smaller than the female. The second characteristic is the most reliable when the rest fail to show. External features of the frog or the tod. Eggshell composed of a head and the trunk together with the indistinct neck, head, snout, external nares, nictitating membrane, orbit, tympanic membrane or eardrum, or parotid, trunk, thoracic, lumbar, appendicular composed of limbs, forelimbs and hindlimbs, forelimb, upper arm, middle forearms, carpus, manus, and fingers. Hindlimb also divided into thigh, trunk or lower leg, ankle, foot, 5 digits or toes, and rib. Thigh, trunk, tarsus, piece, weave, free, taxus. B. Mouth cavity. Open the frog's mouth by bending the jaw for back. Cut the muscle at the corner of the mouth if so directed. Watch out any mucus present located the following. Median subbrustal fossa, a depression of the middle anterior portion of the sulcus marginalis. Pulvinar rostral, slight elevations on each side of the median subbrus fossa. Lateral subbrusal fossa, the two depressions of the sulcus marginalis which are adjacent and lateral to the pulvinar rostral. Conjoa, or internal nares, the two small openings which are inward extensions of the internal nares. Vomerine teeth and Isidian tooth. The greater part of the mouth's roof is occupied by the two bugles which are in the inward extensions of the eyeball. Floor of the mouth. Lower jaw. Tuberculum perilingual, perilingual fossa, tongue, laryngeal. Exercise number 8. The skeletal system. Introduction. The skeleton serves as a support or framework of a body, a firm surface for muscle attachment, protection of cells, parts, and important organs, site of manufacture or of red blood corpuscles, and mineral storage. The skeletal system may contain two parts, the exoskeleton and the endoskeleton. The exoskeleton, which comes chiefly from the ectoderm, consists of the hardened or horny structure which develops from the skin. The endoskeleton, which is formed from the mesoderm, consists of bony and cartilaginous structures found internally. The bones and cartilage, together with connective tissues, fibers like the tendons and ligaments, maintain and support the body form. The marrow tissue, which manufactures the red blood corpuscles and some white ones, may be within the cavity of long bones. In sharks, the endoskeleton is entirely cartilaginous. In the higher vertebrates, however, the cartilaginous skeleton is deposited with calcium phosphate or gaseous substances until it's become ossified into bones. Such bones, which originate from cartilage, are known as cartilage bones. Other bones develop directly as osseous deposits and are known as membrane or investing bones. Objectives: by the end of this exercise, you should be able to identify the major bones of the frog's skeleton. Compare the frog's skeleton with the human skeleton. Skull of the third or dorsal view. Foramen magnum. A large opening at the posterior end of the skull for the passage of the spinal cord. Exoccipital bones. Two flat bones bordering the two sides of the foramen magnum. They bear the occipital condyles, which are ventral and lateral projections to the foramen magnum. These articulate the skull with the atlas. The ptotic bones, the squamosals, the frontoparietal bones, the sphygmoid premaxilla and maxillae quadralugea upper jaw, paraspinoid, platanoids, pterygoids. C is the lower jaw. The lower jaw is composed of the right and left halves. Each half is divided into three parts: the main tromacilian, dentary, angulo-splenial. Third D is hide cartilage. This constitutes the visceral apparatus of the frog and contains cartilage plates supporting the floor of the mouth, identifying the anterior cornea or the horns. Alary processes. The small lateral expansions from anterolateral borders of the hydroid, posterior and lateral to the anterior cornea. Posterior cornea, the two short posterior horns behind the alary process, which projects in the posterior lateral borders of the hilioid. Thyroid processes, posterior and medial to the preceding parts arising from the middle parts of posterior margin of the body. These are the ossified parts of the apparatus and they help support the larynx. A. The vertebral column. There are 10 vertebrae in the vertebral column of the frog. The neighboring vertebrae are joined with each other by the zygoglottis. First is atlas vertebra. The first vertebra is known as the atlas. It does not possess any transverse process. It has an interior rounded concave surface which articulates with the orbital sides of the skull. This is the only cervical vertebra is the vertical column of the frog. The typical vertebra. Get an isolated typical vertebra. Study the following parts: the centrum, neural arch, neural spine, transverse process, scapular pierce, prostozygopocasis, sacral vertebra, urostyle. F. The sternum and pectoral girdle. Pectoral, this is the group of bones which support the anterior appendage of the forelimb. It is not attached to the vertebral column. Starting from the dorsal to ventral, the parts are the suprascapula, scapula, clavicle, coracoid, fenestra, epicuradoid, sternum, epidisternum, omosternum, mesosternum, excipisternum, and the forelimb is the humerus, radioulna, carpus, metacarpals, phalanx. Pelvic girdles, unlike the pectoral girdle. The pelvic girdle is articulated to vertical column of the sacral vertebrae. This is the set of cartilage bones which supports the hind limbs. It is composed of the right and left halves. Each is known as the intimate bone. Ilium, a long bone whose interior underlies with the transverse process of the sacral vertebrae. The atrial, a posterior bone which forms the posterior border of the acetabulum. The pubis, the triangular bone on the ventral side of the pelvic girdle which forms the ventral border of the acetabulum. Hindbloom, the femur, tibio, tarsus, calcaneum, astragalus, metatarsals, phalange, and calcar. The human skeleton view the model in the skeleton of man. Observe the common basic pattern with that of the third. Study and compare the human skeleton, both intact and discrepanting, with the skeleton of those found frog at the third. Also take note of the difference between the two. Exercise number 9, entitled The Muscular System. Introduction. The muscular system is concerned with the various types of movements. It is composed of muscles which differ in origin, histology, distributions, and function. And neurons, as well as other vertebrates, have 3 types of muscle tissues. The first group is skeletal, striated, voluntary, which is under the control of the will and forms the bulk of the body wall. The second is the visceral, non-striated or smooth, involuntary, which are found in the walls of the digestive tract and other organs of the viscera. Their movement is controlled by the sympathetic nervous system. Skeletal muscle cells are cylindrical and are attached to fibers from end to end. Several of these fibers are bound together into a bundle, usually referred to as muscle. Muscles are found in many shapes and sizes. The action of a muscle is a description of its function. Thus, muscles that blend a limb at a joint are called flexors. Muscles that straighten a limb at a joint are called extensors. A rotator turns apart. A levator raises apart. A depressor lowers. An adductor draws towards a midline. If a limb is drawn away from a midline, an abductor is functioning. A constrictor, a spinner, closes an opening. A dilator enlarges or widens an opening. Materials and methods. Skin and preserved frog or tad. The head and the trunk, musculature. In the muscles of the head or the ventral aspect. Mylotheod, a very thin sheet of muscle at the ventral surface of the head region. The origin, the insertion, and the action. B. The muscle of the head or dorsal aspect. The depressor mandibula, a broad muscle behind the tympanic ring, the origin, insertion, and action. Temporalis and masseter. Letter C is abdominal muscle. Rectus abdominis, broad, a thin muscle covering in ventral side of the abdomen. External oblique, a thin sheet of muscle which forms the outer layer of the body wall at the side of the rectus abdominis. Internal oblique, another sheet of oblique muscles internal to the preceding part, thoracic or cheese muscle, gluteate.